Hello. I never thought my life could turn into a melodrama. My name is Alex and I grew up in a small family, and the values of love and loyalty were etched into my heart. My parents had a marriage I admired, simple but strong. Maybe that's why my first marriage, which ended in infidelity, shook me to the core. I thought I had learned my lesson about trust and loyalty, but life, it seems, wasn't done testing me. After my divorce, I didn't think I'd find someone like Stacy. She was radiant, with a wild streak that balanced my cautious nature. She made life adventurous but safe at the same time, which is a difficult combination. We met through mutual friends, and from the first time she laughed at one of my bad jokes, I was hooked. We dated for 2 years before tying the knot in a small ceremony on the beach Stacy loved so much. Despite our struggles, like losing our jobs and moving to a more modest place, we stuck by each other. And then there was Paul, my best friend for almost 2 decades. We'd been through it all, drunken college nights, first jobs, even his messy divorce. I trusted him as much as I trusted Stacy, if not more. So you can imagine my surprise when, little by little, cracks began to form in the relationship I thought was the strongest. It started with small, insignificant things. Stacy started working late more often. She claimed it was because of the office rush, which made sense, given her industry. But then there were the times when she'd quickly close her laptop screen if I walked into the room. She'd smile nervously at me, saying she was just distracted by work gossip or reading about her coworkers. At first, I didn't think much of it. Who hasn't gotten lost in some work drama? But then there were the unexplained nights. I'd ask if she wanted me to pick her up from the office, and she'd decline, saying she was driving with a friend. Once, I even offered to bring her dinner during a late shift. She shot down the idea so quickly that I blinked in confusion. "It's not worth the drive," she said. "I'll get something from the vending machine." Stacy loved her food. That excuse wouldn't do. Paul had also started acting strange around the same time. He'd stopped showing up for our usual Saturday beer and game nights, citing fatigue or errands. When I invited him and his new girlfriend, Lily, to dinner with Stacy and me, he kept checking his phone, seeming distracted. Stacy also seemed uncomfortable, which I chalked up to her not being close to Lily. Still, I could tell something was wrong. The turning point came on a Friday night when I came home early. It was a slow day at work, so my boss had given us permission to take off after lunch. I wanted to surprise Stacy, maybe take her to her favorite taco place. I pulled into the driveway, noticed Stacy's car was gone, and assumed she was still at work. But then I saw Paul's truck parked down the street. Not in front of my house, not in his usual spot when he arrived, but a little further away, like he didn't want to be seen. I tried to push the thought away. Maybe he was visiting one of the neighbors. But as I walked into the house, something was nagging at me. Stacy's coffee mug from this morning was still on the counter. She hated leaving dishes out. Her phone charger, which usually went in her purse, was sitting on the couch. Little things, right? But little things can scream when they're out of place. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and settled into the living room. A few minutes later, I heard the front door open. Stacy walked in, startled to see me. She smiled, but her expression didn't reach her eyes. "You're home early," she said, her voice a little too casual. "Surprise," I said, gesturing to the beer in my hand. "I thought we could go get tacos." Her hesitation was subtle, but it was there. "Oh, I had a late lunch at work. Maybe another night?" Paul's name was out before I could stop it. "Hey, isn't that Paul's truck outside?" Her reaction was what caught me. Her shoulders tensed, and her hand lingered on the doorframe a second too long. Then she shrugged and said, "Maybe. He mentioned he was stopping by to pick something up the other day." I didn't press the issue, but the worry remained. That night, Stacy went to bed early, citing a headache. I stayed up looking through old photos of us, trying to remind myself that my doubts were just that, doubts. But when I climbed into bed, I couldn't help but notice that she was curled up away from me, clutching her pillow like it was a shield. Over the next few weeks, my suspicions grew. Stacy started dressing a little differently for work, wearing the perfume she'd previously saved for dates. Paul rarely responded to my texts, and when he did, it was always short, like he was in a hurry. Then, one night, Stacy left her phone on the counter while she showered. A message popped up on the screen. It wasn't a name I recognized, just initials. PL, the preview said. Are you sure Alex won't find out? My stomach twisted, but I didn't open it. I couldn't. I started watching them more closely after that. Stacy's late nights, Paul's excuses, they matched up too perfectly. I casually asked Stacy one day if she'd spoken to Paul lately. Her answer was quick and nonchalant, but her eyes darted to the side as she said it. Paul, on the other hand, responded almost awkwardly when I asked him the same thing a week later. If there was something going on between Stacy and Paul, I needed proof, not just for me, but to handle this properly. I wasn't going to sit back and let my life fall apart without knowing the truth. So I started by reaching out to the only person I thought might be able to help me, Paul's girlfriend, Lily. Calling her was awkward. We weren't close, but I knew she was perceptive and not the type to ignore signs of betrayal. When I told her what I'd noticed, she didn't react with shock. Instead, there was a pause on the other end of the line that let me know she'd been suspicious too. You know, Lily finally said, Paul's been acting weird. He's secretive with his phone, and sometimes he makes excuses not to see me. I thought it was stress or something, but now I'm not so sure. From that moment on, we became an unlikely team, bonded by our shared anger and a grim determination to uncover the truth. It turned out that Lily was friends with Stacy's sister, Claire, which made things even more interesting. Lily offered to fill Claire in on the situation, someone Stacy could confide in without raising suspicion. At first, I was hesitant. Was it fair to drag Claire into this mess? But Lily convinced me. She'll want to know, she said, and she was right. With Claire's help, we began to piece it together. At first, it was little things, like snippets of conversation Claire overheard when Stacy visited her. Once, Stacy mentioned complicated feelings for someone, but she brushed it off as work stress. Then, one day, Claire borrowed Stacy's phone to make a call and noticed a contact saved under an odd alias. She didn't say anything at the time, but when she described it to Lily and me, I knew it was Paul. The turning point came when Lily managed to access Paul's phone while he was in the shower. I'll never forget her voice when she called me, shaking with rage and grief. Alex, you need to see this, she said, sending me a series of screenshots. Explicit messages between Paul and Stacy filled my screen, each one a punch to the chest. There were explicit photos, even videos. The kind of evidence that left no room for doubt. Claire was devastated. I can't believe Stacy could do this, she said, tears in her eyes, when we met to discuss what to do next. Paul is a scoundrel, but my sister, I just don't understand. Neither of us understood. But there was one thing we all agreed on. This would not end quietly. Paul and Stacy needed to face the consequences of what they'd done. The opportunity to strike the final blow came sooner than expected. Paul invited Stacy and me to his company's holiday party, a big formal event at an upscale hotel downtown. At first, I wanted to decline. The thought of standing in the same room with him and pretending everything was okay gave me goosebumps. But Lily and Claire had another idea. What if we used the party? Lily said, her eyes flashing with a mixture of anger and determination. It's the perfect stage. Over the next few days, we hatched our plan. Claire distracted Stacy while Lily and I prepared evidence. We didn't just want to confront them. We wanted to make sure everyone knew what kind of people they were. Lily pulled a few strings and got Paul's boss involved. It turned out that Paul was already walking a fine line at work, and this scandal would be the final nail. That night at the party, I felt like I was in the lion's den. Stacy looked stunning in her emerald green dress, which both infuriated and saddened me. How could she stand there smiling and holding my hand, knowing what she was doing behind my back with that same hand? Paul greeted us at the door with his usual charming grin, but his eyes darted nervously to mine, as if he sensed I was there for more than just champagne and socializing. Lily arrived shortly after, looking stunning and exuding an energy that made Stacy visibly nervous. "This is going to be an unforgettable evening," Lily said, raising her glass to me in a personal toast. The room buzzed with laughter and music as the evening unfolded. Paul was in his element, chatting with his colleagues, but every now and then I caught him sneaking glances at Stacy. She, in turn, avoided my gaze, her smile strained as I tried to strike up a conversation. Then came the moment of truth. Paul's boss stepped up to the microphone to give a speech, thanking everyone for their hard work. When he was done, Lily and I made our move. At the boss's nod, the projector at the front of the room lit up, showing a series of images, screenshots of Paul and Stacy's explicit messages, photos of them, even a muted clip of one of the videos. A gasp rippled through the crowd as people realized what they were seeing. Paul's face went ghostly white, and Stacy grabbed my arm in panic, her voice a whisper. "Alex, what's going on?" I pulled away from her, my voice even but cold. "You know exactly what it is, Stacy." Paul tried to mumble an explanation, but Lily cut him off, her voice so sharp it could have cut glass. "Leave it, Paul. Everyone here deserves to know what kind of person you are. And Stacy, you're no better." The aftermath was chaos. Paul's boss made it clear that he would no longer be welcome at the company, citing the gross misconduct evident in the evidence we'd presented. Stacy stormed out of the room in tears, but not before enduring the disapproving looks of Paul's colleagues. Lily and I stood together, watching the world they'd worked so hard to keep secret crumble. Later that evening, Stacy tried to call me. I let the phone ring. There was nothing more to say. Paul's betrayal had cost him his career, and Stacy's actions had destroyed our marriage. The fallout was huge, but for the first time in weeks, I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about taking back control of my life and refusing to let their lies define me. And as I stood in the silence of my home that night, I knew one thing for sure. That chapter of my life was over, but a new one was waiting ahead. About 2 weeks after the fiasco at the office party, I got a letter. It was official notice. Paul and Stacy were suing Lily and me for defamation, invasion of privacy, and emotional distress. The audacity of it almost made me laugh. Here were 2 people who had ruined my life, and now they wanted to claim the moral high ground? I immediately called Lily, and the anger in her voice mirrored mine. "Can you believe it?" she said. "They lied, and now we're the bad guys?" We knew we had to fight back. Luckily, we had 2 strong allies, Stacy's sister Claire and a great lawyer named Marcus, who Claire had recommended. Marcus was sharp and no-nonsense, with a calm demeanor that made you feel like everything was going to be okay, even when things weren't going well. The weeks leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of preparation. Marcus made sure we had everything we needed: copies of messages, photographs, even witness statements from Paul's colleagues who had been at the party. Claire was a vital part of the team, offering emotional support and using her inside knowledge of Stacy's behavior to help bolster our case. The court sessions were grueling. Paul and Stacy both portrayed themselves as victims, with Paul claiming the revelation had ruined his career prospects, and Stacy tearfully describing how she had been humiliated beyond repair. It was hard to sit through their testimony without rolling your eyes. Lily, on the other hand, was unwavering. Once she took the stand, she spoke clearly and convincingly, her voice steady even as Paul's lawyer tried to embarrass her. "Did you send evidence to his employer out of malice?" they asked. "No," Lily replied firmly. "I did it because the truth deserved to be known. Paul's behavior was unethical, both personally and professionally. My own testimony was less polished, but it didn't need to be. The evidence spoke for itself." By the time Marcus had finished debunking Paul and Stacy's claims, it was clear that they had no solid ground under their feet. When the verdict was handed down, it was a clear victory for us. The judge had dismissed their claims and even criticized them for trying to use the legal system as a tool against the people they had harmed. It felt like a weight had been lifted from me, and I couldn't stop smiling as we walked out of the courtroom. Lily patted me on the back, her face alight with triumph. "We did it," she said, and for the first time in a long time, I felt real relief. Claire insisted that we celebrate at her place that evening. "You two deserve a night to relax," she said, and Lily and I happily agreed. Claire's flat was warm and welcoming, with soft lighting and a bottle of champagne already chilling on the counter when we arrived. The evening started lightly and cheerfully. We toasted justice, laughing at the ridiculous arguments Paul and Stacy were trying to make in court. It had been Claire, or maybe Lily. I was too far away to care. We took a selfie, the 3 of us smiling and half covered by the sheets, looking equal parts triumphant and ridiculous. And then, In what seemed like a brilliant move at the time, we sent the photo to Stacy and Paul. The message was simple: here's to karma. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and a sinking feeling in my stomach. Memories of the night before came flooding back in fragments: laughter, kisses, a photo. I groaned, covering my face with my hands. What had we done? Lily was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed with coffee in her hand. "Morning," she said, her tone a mixture of amusement and mild regret. "Did you sleep well?" A few minutes later, Claire walked in, looking as disheveled as I did. "Well, it happened," she said, plopping down next to me with a grin. "No regrets, right?" I couldn't help but laugh, though part of me cringed at the thought of Stacy and Paul seeing the photo. Regrets? Maybe one or two, I admitted, rubbing my temples. We spent the rest of the morning recovering, exchanging sheepish giggles over breakfast and piecing together the events of the night. Despite the chaos, I couldn't deny that it felt good to relax for once, to feel like I wasn't carrying all the weight on my shoulders. As it turned out, the photo had the desired effect. Stacy and Paul didn't respond directly, but Claire later heard from mutual friends that it had sent them into a furious spiral of arguing and finger-pointing. Part of me felt small for having stooped to their level, but another part of me, the part that had felt betrayed and humiliated, couldn't help but relish the irony. In the end, that night became one of those stories you tell with a mixture of embarrassment and pride, a reminder of how far I've come and how much I've been through. Life after betrayal isn't easy, but sometimes it offers moments that make it all worth it. Goodbye.